Okay, I'm back. Can everybody hear me? I'm so sorry about that. That was just a big, all of a sudden, my StreamYard just quit on me, and that's what happens when you're live. So thank you for your patience, everybody who stuck around. I really appreciate it. Here's Ken.
Hi.
Mr. Kratz, I'm so sorry about that. My apologies.
Well,
I wish I could have controlled it. It was just technology crashing on me. My
I've
apologies.
I have no idea when it broke because I just keep talking until somebody usually stops me, and then I realized we weren't online anymore. And that was odd,
Okay.
but we're back.
Yeah, we're back. We're better than ever. Yeah, my apologies, everybody. Yeah, and I appreciate everybody's support. So, did you, there's still, my point is, we're talking about the Karen Reed not, uh, not, not really establishing that John O'Keefe ever went in the house, and yet they keep sort of hanging on a conspiracy that they really can't even talk about or define. It's just sort of everybody's lying, everybody's in on it, but it's I mean, how can that be a winning?
Dare I say you're breaking up and coming in and out of me again? I don't know um, if you're moving around or something. So you're going to have to repeat that. I'm so sorry.
Okay, can you hear me now, guys?
Yes,
Can
very,
everybody hear me
very
now?
well. Yes.
Okay, so my point is that they can't. It sounds like I'm underwater, someone said. They can't really prove how it was a conspiracy. They can't put John O'Keefe in the house, but yet they're still going on saying everybody's guilty somehow, every single witness, and going scorched earth, as Karen Reed puts it, on every single witness. Do you think the jury will respond to that?
I think they'll respond, but I don't think it's going to be very well for the defense. You know, I saw their attempts with Colin Albert, and you know, boy, for a kid who seemed to not be involved at all, for a kid who had left the house at 12:10, can prove uh, as best as people can prove with text messages and the like, that he wasn't even around for that to be thrown in this mix for such a young man, and you know, it reminds me, of course, of the things that have happened with Dassey and Avery, and throwing in people. But it does seem that the Karen Reed um, uh, clan, her supporters, are particularly willing to, on really no evidence, throw all kinds of stuff out there, which is, you know, you got to hope the jurors aren't privy to those kind of comments, and that the prosecution is able, in not only trial but in their summation at the end of it, to discuss those kinds of tactics. And when you have you know, ordinary citizens that are subjected to that kind of vitriol just for really coming forward, doing something they probably don't really want to do anyway, testify in a high profile court hearing, but they do that, and then to be treated with such disdain by you know, members of the bar or supporters of the defendant is a sad commentary. You know, 20 years ago, um, that would never have happened. There would never, you know, anytime a jury trial was happening in this country, there was such a reverence around it, and that you shouldn't be uh, even knowing who the jurors are, much less trying to impact a real weighty decision that they have to make. So I don't think it's been to the good. I don't think that's been a positive development in our system. But all of our major systems are so eroded right now, Roberta, and I can speak mostly to the criminal justice system, just the confidence that people used to have in the system and it being used for purposes, sometimes not just for ferreting out the bad actors from the good ones, but used for personal agendas or political purposes or even just vindictive, targeted prosecutions. Anytime you want to make an example out of somebody, it always kind of makes me cringe because that's not our job as DAs. The worst thing a DA can have is a reputation, no matter what the reputation is, because then something else is going into your decisions, something else other than the facts of the case and what needs to occur as a just result. Your reputation is being factored in, and that doesn't bode well for justice for each individual client or each individual defendant.
This is an interesting question. Cynthia, thanks. Who is paying these Reed supporters, including an attorney, to sit with the Reed family last week and report on defense attorney DUI discussions and jury information on his podcast? Do you mean the DUI guy, Cynthia? I think that's who you mean. Any history of this in past cases on the attorney level? So I guess what you're asking, so there's all these, I don't know if you're aware, that there's all these mostly civil lawyers going on YouTube and giving their opinions on criminal trials. And one of them is the DUI guy who got, I believe, kicked out of the, I can't remember. He had some history with the Depp Heard thing. He auctioned off his diary from the Depp Heard trial and now got kicked out of this trial for trying to fake a press pass. And the defense invited him in to sit with them to give them ideas, which I thought was a really good example, it gave us a glimpse that maybe the defense wasn't going so well. If you're asking a YouTube lawyer for ideas from the gallery, I mean, what are your thoughts, Ken?
Well, I always like to get the most opinions that I can. In the Avery trial, I assembled 6 or 7 of the very best prosecutors in Wisconsin a year before the trial, even, and we got together and we went through all of the evidence in the case, and we decided what the defense was going to be. This was in February of '06. We had this get together, and all the different homicide prosecutors were giving their opinion. And in that sense, it was a really wonderful experience. And in fact, I don't know that I've ever said this either publicly, but during the course of that meeting with the skilled prosecutors, they said, "Go find a blood vial. That's going to be the defense." And this was, 6 months before any blood vial was ever even found in
No
the
way.
county clerk's office. They said, "Find your blood vial because the defense is going to be there." But what was good about that, and I think this might be interesting to some of your listeners, what was good about that is by, a week after that, perhaps, we were already looking at the EDTA defense. Again, a year before it ever came up, we had started doing um, uh, the legwork on how it was used in OJ and how the lab hadn't developed a good enough protocol, and if in fact the blood vial was coming down there, EDTA was going to be part of it. So the fact that that was part of our discussions a year before trial, I think is an interesting story.
And so one of the criticisms of the prosecutor Lally in this trial is that while he's prosecuting, he's also dispelling the defense myths. So, for example, one of the defense talking points in opening statements, even though there's been no dog DNA found, is that John O'Keefe entered the home, he was beat up, and he was attacked by a dog. So they had the prosecution had both the defense and the prosecution agreed to have samples taken, and no dog DNA was found. And he had the expert on from the lab talking about how this lab that can tell, what kind of samples are from what kind of animal. And interestingly, pig was found, so he must have touched bacon or something like that on the sample. But do you think that is effective? Other people are saying, oh, it would be much better to have rebuttal witnesses.
Oh, no. In fact, in my case, I did just what the prosecution did. I knew planting was going to be their defense, and so during my case in chief, I put on the EDTA expert from the FBI who developed the protocol. We knocked the defense out of the game even before they got to enter it, or even though they got to put on one witness for it. So that's a very powerful tactic, especially if they've tipped their hand, if they've said this is where we're going, which in Avery they did during opening statements. They talked about the vial of blood, and that's where the defense was going, so it was kind of easy. And I don't know what they said about doggy DNA in this case, but I suppose if it's something that's kind of out there as a general theory or rumor, or even as alluded to by the witnesses, you got a chance to knock it out, you do that.
Yeah, because I mean, if these innocence fraud campaigns have taught us anything, is that once someone believes something, it's very hard for them to or grasp onto an idea. It's very hard to get them to let it go and say, "Oh, I was wrong."
Right. Well, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled. And once they make that kind of public declaration, as they have in many Avery supporters, I'll never believe that Brendan was involved. When you make those kind of statements, it's very, very difficult to admit that it was fake evidence presented by filmmakers who wanted me to see exactly what I saw. They were using my emotions to cloud what I should have known common sense wise was pretty far fetched.
And another thing is you have a very similar temperament to Lolly. You're at least from what I've seen from the footage of Making a Murderer. You're very even. You're not particularly theatrical, or you weren't particularly theatrical in the courtroom. Um, is Can theatrics, how helpful are theatrics, and can they work against someone? Like,
Sure. Sure,
Mhm.
most people don't do it very well, and so it's very heavy-handed. It's kind of a uh, the and where were you on the 12th, and that whole kind of turning and creating these aha moments when they don't exist. We kind of talk about innocence fraud. That's kind of the definition. They create these bombshell moments that never existed in real life. And so when they do that, jurors aren't stupid. They'll look at him and say, "You're an adult. I mean, why are you here? There's no reason for this." No, I've always been soft spoken and quiet, and um, I've always said if you want somebody to listen, you should speak softer, not louder. And
Interesting.
that's I've even during the presentation of of most of the Avery case, I spoke mostly in this voice, and that's that's what I wanted to do. That's what I felt comfortable doing. I can do the pounding my fists on the table, but I think it's much more effective to just quietly, when you're examining a witness, just tilt your head. There was a case that I asked, kind of one of those gotcha moments. Isn't it true that this happened? And the poor defendant just looked. I got him. It was just terrible. And I actually was bold enough in court to look at the jury and say, "It's okay. They already know." And he admitted what happened, but I never forgot that cross examination moment when for the first time one of my questions was so well placed that the guy just gave up on the stand. I can't even tell the story anymore.
So do you think, I mean, back to Colin Albert, I
Yeah.
mean, they showed these videos of Colin Albert to a rival hockey team that had some girls that he liked uh talk to or something, and he's threatening them. Do you think that went any to his character, or do you think that any of the jurors were persuaded that he could have been involved in a conspiracy from those videos? I mean, so much of this evidence we're seeing, this Karen Reed trial, is what I call like a Facebook defense,
Right.
social media videos. You were at so and so's baby shower. Here's a picture of you 50 years ago at a beach with someone. I mean, I mean, it just, to me, it reeks of desperation. But other people are saying, "Oh, we're not watching this same trial. The defense is killing it."
Yeah.
I mean, what can you speak a little bit about this kind of Facebook defense?
Sure. The you know one of the real downsides of having um, such true crime buffs is they think that they kind of can figure out what's going on because they've either watched enough of these, and they very well may, and from their experience standpoint, uh, they're probably very well versed, but they weren't there, and they aren't a lawyer, and they're speaking about things, unfortunately, I think, out of their depth. If in fact they're trying to talk about legal concepts or what a jury may think is important or not, they don't have the credentials uh, to do that. Which is, the whole. I got my law degree from Netflix, and when you're dealing with a whole new population of people that feel that they should be actively involved in real time when things are going, that's a little dangerous. Um, Even when I'm asked, well, do you think she's guilty or not? I'm very uncomfortable with that while the trial is going on. It should never be turned into a, you know, let's let's vote. 83% think that she's guilty, and things like this. That's really a disservice to the process itself. What it's meant to accomplish. It's not, to for um, voting or gambling on the results of the case. If we had a witness that was gambling on the results of the case, I suppose that might be admissible to go to their credibility, how much they should be believed or not. And so all these things should be handled by that in the courtroom, by cross examination. And it's the prosecutor's duty to not just let their witnesses kind of be beat up, but to, at least in the courtroom, come to their defense, ask the right questions, perhaps change their tone, make it more of a pointed cross exam or redirect. Um, and I don't know DA Lally, I don't know his style. But if he, excuse me, if he hasn't come to their defense very publicly and very aggressively in the courtroom, I would recommend that happen.
Interesting. And a lot of what we're seeing is, these breaks, and they meet at the, the two teams meet. Now I'm forgetting the name of it. When sidebars. We're
Yeah.
seeing a ton of sidebars because they don't want to do this in front of the jury, and it seems like the defense is getting reprimanded. But then, I watch a day of court, and then I'm watching on court TV. I mean, Lolly ended on a bombshell, which was that Karen Reed's taillight was shown on camera at 8 something in the morning. They were doing a welfare check on John O'Keefe's kids, and there's her broken taillight right there for all to see at the end
Hmm.
of trial, and no one reported on it. Everyone's reporting on these nothing defense points.
Hmm.
Why are the journalists going along with this, I mean, with these nonsense defense talking points?
Yeah. Well, now I'm out of my depth because I don't know why a journalist chooses to, other than which is likely to create the most clicks. And I doubt that a very measured kind of plotting through all the evidence and then what happened and then what happened is going to create the kind of clicks that, you know, asking somebody if they, wear a dog mask regularly or something. I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah.
the outrageous questions seem to always garner the attention, but that's, nothing new here, Ruperta. That's,
And yeah,
it's,
and we just talked about, we know that it's easier to fool someone to
right.
convince. I think Mark Twain said that. Is that right?
Well, he's alleged to have said that.
Okay.
So I always say
Uh,
it's Mark Twain because if there's somebody else that you have other than throwing shade on Mark Twain about he's alleged to have said, well, tell me who said it then. And if you can't, then shut up. I don't want to hear about what he's alleged to have said. He said it, and let's move on.
Yeah, he had a lot of wisdom, Mark Twain, and so we talk about that, and yet, when Making a Murderer came out, you went on a really, really strong media
Hmm.
campaign saying this is edited footage of court testimony
Right.
from witnesses. This is edited very cleverly edited of Brendan Dassey's
Deceptively edited, right?
deceptively
So
edited, thank you, of his police interviews. And yet there's still people going around saying, still holding on to it. I mean, it is, uh, is there, I guess what I'm asking is, you know, we always hear truth is the best, like sunlight is the best disinfectant, all this stuff.
yeah.
Truth is, but how do you get through to some of these people holding on to it? Or as what I'm coming to, and you can tell me what you think, I'm coming to believe that the majority of these people in these innocence fraud campaigns are disordered people who enjoy turning things on their head and think of it as a game. Um, Identify with the convict or the
Hmm.
accused, and have dark triad characteristics themselves.
Well, they
We always think that if we can sort of like just like talk these points out, but I don't believe it's that simple anymore. What do you
well,
think?
well, cyberbullying is certainly something that I had happened to me. After Making Murderer came out, I was in my own private law firm, and I decided to publicly speak out about Making a Murderer to address all the ways that they have deceived the public, all the evidence that you haven't seen, that they've kept from you, that it was a narrative that was kind of built by and for the defense. The defense is making this project. They're They're the protagonists of the project, String and Buting, and are cast that way. Of course, then you cast as villains, myself and Sergeant Colburn and Lieutenant Link, three of the largest targets anyway from making a murderer, and you translate that behavior from that character. If you agree that what you see on the screen is very edited, it's what they want you to see. There's nothing unscripted about it. If you kind of use those terms, it's very scripted. It's me saying the words, but they've chosen the words when they harvest them, a little bit from this statement, a little bit from that statement, and they can put together me saying what it is that they want to present. But here's the insidious part, Roberta. They take that character, Ken Kratz, let's say, all right, that they um, uh, amplify those things that are not very attractive about my personality, and never give the other side. Just as an example, when they take that character, the audience believes that additional consequence shouldn't happen to that character, but should then happen to the real Ken Kratz. In other words, the person playing that character. This sounds a little bit deep and convoluted, but they're attacking me for what they presented my character to have said, if that makes sense. So they're really combining the worst of both worlds. They're very deceptively um, showing you, or at least purporting to show you what happened. It wasn't what happened at all. Those, many of those um, um, uh, snippets that they choose were kind of cobbled together, and so to require the real Ken Kratz or the real Andy Colburn to kind of suffer the um, consequence that was being thrown at that particular character is powerful, is real, and you have these real people then like me losing my very real law firm. You have people like me not even being able to practice my profession anymore because of the attack to my reputation. I can't practice law. I was good at it, I think. I still had a lot to add and provide the justice community, but I was voted off the island. I was shunned, excluded from that, and that's all because of a TV show. It's all because of what uh, these obsessed fans of this show believed was necessary. That is additional life-changing, life-altering consequences for something they watched on a television show, and that's dangerous. And it happened to me, and I'm sure it in a very real sense is happening to the witnesses of the Karen Reed trial that have been called.
Yeah, what advice? I mean, let's look at just to the beginning of this is Ken Kratz's channel, which is awesome. He's going through his trial diary and really recreating what the prosecution of Stevie and Avery looked like, minus any kind of propaganda or manipulation. Let's just look at the beginning of episode 2 and just see some of the results of what it feels like when Netflix's biggest show casts you as a conspirator and of Stephen Avery, of a plot against Stephen Avery.
I'm Ken Kratz, and this is Off the Record.
And I just phoned up. Okay. So people were saying, no, you don't live by him, blah, 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 whatever. Okay. So it was just kind of proof like, yeah, well, there's the picture. And right. I mean, if it was wrong to do it, definitely I'll take it down, but... Yeah, so here's the thing. It wasn't anything to cause damage to him or harm or threats or anything. Right.
But as you saw the comments after you posted it...
So am I understanding right? This woman put up the picture of your home and didn't see anything wrong with it. I just wanted to prove that I live next door to him. Is that what happened here?
Well, this is going to go on. Not just did she post a picture of my home, she posted it with a real-time update. They're in there now, and other people started then commenting and planning. Now's the time to go blow up the house. And so this woman was, unbeknownst to us, of course, lived in the neighborhood. And these are the police that are investigating not just doxing, but the very real threats that were online with pictures of my house and my wife and myself and times that we were home in order to encourage people to harm us.
That is absolutely bone-chillingly terrifying.
And so that's the kind, when we talk about vitriol, when we talk about, what's reasonable, to do to attack somebody from a TV show. This is, whether it's reasonable or not, it's the kind of thing that since Making a Murder was released, I've been suffering from. And you know this, Roberta. I don't know many other people that do know this, that we had left Wisconsin because the attacks were so bad. My wife, Leah, who you know, lovely woman, but she had developed an anxiety disorder to the point where she almost couldn't leave the house. And it was because of these daily direct threats, not only to me, but threats that they hope my daughter gets raped and I have to watch it, and very, very violent comments from people who wouldn't know me from anybody, from Adam. But this show had whipped up the frenzy and the aftermath of the show. It became a blood sport, I think, to intimidate, to attempt to alter my life and my life's work and the whole arc of my life. And I hate admitting it, but they were very successful. I haven't worked since March of 2016. I haven't been able to tell my story in a very real sense. Even Convicting a Murderer didn't include me in much of their programming about threats to me. They talked about Andy Colburn and how Tom Fossbender felt awkward when he saw himself walking down the stairs on TV as if that's a consequence. I lost my law firm. They were threatening to blow up my house, to kill me, to kill my wife, to harm my son, and were able to, without any assistance from the mainstream media. Mainstream media really fueled this by writing stories about how Yelp, how everybody had crushed me, and how my new book was only getting 1-star reviews from hundreds of fake individuals pretending to give me a 1-star review and really canceling me in a very real sense, and my message, if anybody cares to hear it, is, you know, I was a very real person, and I thought did a good job in prosecuting both Avery and Dassey as effectively and as ethically as I could, and I took great pride in what I had done, and to use those cases as examples of my not only incompetence but what they call a willful desire to convict honest and law-abiding and innocent individuals is is the legacy, I guess, that I'm attached to, or that has attached to me as a result of making murder.
It's awful, and not for nothing, but you were up against a really well-moneyed defense team, not unlike Karen Reed's. She's got to be. It's at least $500,000 defense team. You were up against a $350,000 defense team back in, what was this, 2007, 2006?
Yeah, it was String and Beauty only got $240 only, but from a right, but that's important to know, because if you thought this was a case about indigent people not being able to be well represented, it's not that kind of case. If you thought that that it was about poor people being targeted and again just being taken advantage of in the criminal justice system, it's not that kind of case. He had the two very best defense lawyers in all of Wisconsin, against myself, and I increased my chances when I added Norm Gahn and Tom Fallon, but it was really the Calumet County, very small Calumet County, that ran the investigation and that oversaw the prep for 15 months and the 6 weeks of prosecution of Avery, and then the multi-week trial of Dassey. So I'm very proud of what it is that we accomplished, and we did it right, and we again achieved the very best result for Teresa's family that I think that we could have, and the fact that that's the case that ends up ending my law career is, I think, a tragedy.
Absolutely, and there are two verdicts that stand to this day, despite a well-moneyed. I mean, talk about the understatement of the year. Well-moneyed challenges, every challenge thrown at it that they could on both Dassey.
There's been no
the Center
case
for the Wrongful Conviction of Youth.
Right.
Amanda Knox has come out in support of Brendan Dassey. Also Damian Eccles. I mean, other I would call them innocence fraud killers have come in support of releasing Brendan Dassey. And what would you say to someone who purports themselves to be an ex-FBI expert, saying that she thinks that Brendan Dassey was framed? What would be your answer? And then we'll get to Murder by Maestro's question.
Well, you talk about kind of well-known people that came out in this case. When originally Making Murder came out with both Dassey and Avery, there were any number of stars of people that were appalled by our behavior. And remember Ricky Gervais saying that Making Murder should get the Academy Award or things, but other
you've just ruined awards. I'm sorry to interrupt. You've just ruined Ricky Gervais for me forever.
No. He I think after he watched some of it, he changed. But the story I want to tell is Kim Kardashian, who is one of the most recognizable people on the planet, had commented on, and to her credit, she has dedicated some of her life to advocating for um, injustice. Let's just say that. So Kim Kardashian had come out and had said something about Brendan Dassey and thinks, he should be, whatever it was, new trial or pardoned or whatever she said. I got a call from TMZ, and the TMZ guy asked me what I thought of Kim Kardashian's comments and did I want to comment on them. And Roberta, I don't know what I'm admitting here, but it was the most surreal moment of my life. I said, she's Kim Kardashian. I'm Ken Kratz. I am not going to put myself in the same paragraph as that, as if I have, something by way of ability to compete against that opinion. I will say, though, that should anybody, Jerry Buting, Kathleen Zellner, anybody want to debate me, want to publicly discuss the Avery and Dassey cases with me, or decisions that I made, or what you now believe to be injustice, I am ready and willing to have that public discussion. And I think that might go a long way to when I actually shine light on their shenanigans, that I don't think it would come out so well.
Yeah, they never want to publicly debate anything. First of all, and Kim Kardashian went on to support some of the. I think it takes a lot to be more guilty than Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
Purvis Payne, Julius Jones,
right?
Excuse me. Rodney Reed, some of our most deranged and dangerous convicts. Murdered by Purvis Payne is really, he ran from the crime scene covered in blood and ran into a police officer. And then was caught hiding in an attic. I don't know how much more guilty you get than that, but okay, Kim Kardashian. Murder by Maestro asks you, Mr. Kratz, the
Yes.
Avery Innocence push must have cost millions. Avery didn't have it. Is there more to it than money?
Well, you've got to, and thanks for the question, but you have to identify which Avery Innocence push are we talking about. There's two of them, and I insist on separating the two cases because each of them has elements of innocence fraud that are ripe for discussion, but in different ways. I think the Kathleen Zellner led efforts, and again, when I spoke to you previously about the Ferguson case from Missouri, I was taken by the playbook, I guess, that Kathleen Zellner has used, and kind of the same playbook and kind of the same motions and the same attacks, and everything's the worst Brady violation she's ever seen. And just the histrionics are pretty funny, but to copy and paste the histrionics then to another state or another case, I think is hilarious.
That's the Ryan Ferguson case. I've done a episode that I put a lot of work into, but she just went from court to court to court to court to court until she finally got a yes on that ridiculous Brady violation thing, and then sued everybody while his while his accomplice, I don't know what you call it when two people work together. Co-defendant, just sat in jail. He just got out for he tried to get him out. That's the Dream Killer case. There's more disinformation on that case, except for the people that live locally. I've heard a lot from people who live locally that really know that case very well, and are convinced, like I am, that he got away with murder there. I mean,
Yeah, I and again, I'm not commenting on the results other than Kathleen Zellner's process that appears to be well rehearsed.
Absolutely. She's also, she's been involved in so many cases that I've delved into. And I mean, wouldn't you think that really what she's looking for is to get Stephen Avery? I mean, isn't the end result of the innocence of what I would call an innocence fraud campaign? That's my opinion. Don't sue me, Kathleen Zellner. Or do sue me, might be interesting. Don't sue me, it's my opinion. Of these campaigns is that they go into our civil courts and then sue for the wrongful convictions, and our civil courts, and often it's your tax dollars paying off these very guilty people for their quote unquote wrongful conviction.
Well, the real bad example of that is the city of Chicago, where there were so many lawsuits that were filed, and there was just this process of settling virtually all of them, and they don't know the cases well enough to delve into them to defend them properly, and so that's the problem that you have when you allow kind of this mass civil lawsuit of law enforcement or for prior acts. I noticed, well, I guess, I don't know the city of Chicago's politics well enough to know why all that happened. I just know some of the players that were involved, and we'll just leave it at that. Okay.
Well, Martin Prive, who writes about these, I agree with you. There's no more innocence fraud cases than Chicago. Chicago is really the center of it that created this, what they like. I'll use their own words, a pattern and practice that they like to use of doing these kinds of innocence fraud shenanigans. And it's been, I think what he says, he has a great Substack called the Crooked City Substack. I'll try to put the link in the description of this episode. And he writes writing all the time. It keeps him busy writing all the time about the what I would call what he would call the wrongful conviction movement and their shenanigans in Chicago. It's enormous. And they're most famously the Medial Innocence Project. I hate to recommend a documentary, but I would rather you read Martin Prive's book, Crooked City, about it, but framed an innocent all-story Simon in order to get a very guilty Anthony Porter out of prison. So, and there's a documentary about it called A Murder in the Park. Yeah.
Roberta, I'm interested to know, has there been any look at prosecution offices, at DA's offices, and how they've kind of involved themselves in these processes? We know that Houston, as an example, Harris County, Texas, where most of the innocence cases, I think, came from for several years because of the conviction integrity units. But when I think what I refer to now as Soros DAs pop up around, and whether it's Philly or Tampa or LA or some of the other examples, when the DAs are actively working with innocence projects to have individuals released, if there isn't a study on that, or if there hasn't been a review of that, and just who is representing the state then, just who's representing the victims, who's representing the process, who represents the conviction in those cases.
That's a really good question, and that was there's a appeal right now, or a lawsuit around Adnan Syed's conviction with Mosby, Marilyn Mosby, who was out the door anyway, and now she's been convicted of these fraud cases that she was charged with. She's going to probably do some prison time, but on her way out, she basically, what we had there was a DA in name only. So you have two defense attorneys talking to each other in court, no one representing the victim, and they let Adnan Syed, Hayman Lee's killer, out on a bunch of nonsense. One of the things was the DNA on Hayman Lee's shoes, not on her feet, in her car, in the back of her car. And the other thing was the Adnan Syed's mentors, either wife or ex-wife, talking about Adnan Syed harassing Hayman Lee before he killed her. So one of the people that released Adnan Syed was Adnan Syed himself, one of these new suspects. And they were talking about the same thing that Zellner talks about, Brady violations. I mean, the bottom is bottomless on the subject. You know, Woodall is asking, Mr. Kratz, is the raw video of Brendan Dassey's police interview available to the public?
Now, that's a great question. You know, many years ago, I did a short YouTube video that's down now. But it shows the fallacy of those on the internet that claim that they've seen the full unedited statement of Brendan Dassey. When you go to YouTube and you click on the version of the Dassey confession, there's 400,000 people that, it was many years ago now, that had watched part one, and 100,000 had watched part two. When you click on them, I would invite your audience to do that and watch the clock. If you watch the clock during the internet version of Dassey, you will see it skipping ahead a lot, that it's edited, heavily edited. And when you compare the original statements of Dassey to what's been edited out, wait for it, you will realize that they edited out all of his admissions. And so there are no admissions left in those, what are purported to be the full confessions. There's no confessions in them. There's no admissions about how he raped Teresa, or involved in the murder, or in the dismemberment, or cremation process. All of his admissions, Roberta, for at least the version that's online, have been altered. And so when I ask people, is this what you thought you saw was the whole version? They've got to kind of admit that even in what should have been resource material, which should have been raw video, it was altered with somebody with an agenda to have removed all of Brenda's submissions. So that's a fact that I sure hope is still true, and that people look into that. By way of, is there a public version available? I don't know. Most of the documents and videos and things that I have, I got many of them actually through open records requests, that things I didn't have already, and that's one of those that you can get through an open records request. But if somebody has a need for a part of it, I'm not going to encourage them to contact me, but maybe they can leave me a note either on X or through you, Roberta, and we might be able to help, or maybe you'll invite me back and ask me specific questions on Brendan,
Absolutely.
and then I can put some examples
Maureen Walsh.
together to do that.
I'm sorry to
Okay.
talk over you. Maureen Walsh says Ken Kratz needs a YouTube channel. He has one, and he's doing awesome stuff on it. I love his voice. The description, I'm sorry, I hopped back on to get this going very quickly, so there's no video description in here, but I'll get it on after the show. I'll get the, it's in the first part one of this interview. You can find his YouTube channel. I encourage you all to subscribe. It's a super interesting series he's doing right now. Maureen says she could listen to him all night. Help the guy out, please. I agree. So, I guess I've really kept you super long, but it's
Sure.
really interesting that we're talking about, edited footage in the Karen Reed trial. But I mean, do you consider this part of the defense, putting out doctored photos, autopsy photos?
Well,
And there's been talk
no.
about sanctioning or getting sanctioned these defense lawyers, but it seems like when these lawyers never seem to get in any trouble. Ditto with our inaccurate press. They never seem to correct themselves. I mean, is there any sort of pulling back the reins? And does that surprise you that they put out edited autopsy photos and say,
Yes.
looks like a dog?
Oh my god! When you told me that for the first time, when I think the autopsy was pretty clear, pretty straightforward about the blunt force trauma, and especially the additional parts about no, dog DNA and other things that have come out. That's pretty compelling, and to be able to somehow misrepresent that doesn't just show mistake, Roberta. It's an intentional attempt to present a narrative, not the truth, but to present a narrative that would be consistent with your client's guilt. I don't know how in the hell Karen's on the courthouse steps during or after court making comments about things, and then being asked, did you do it? I love that question because she never says no. She just says, well, you know who did it, or those things where if you ask them straight out, they'll ask you a different question, or they'll change the subject. If I'm not mistaken, that's what Karen did just recently on the courthouse steps.
That's right. And her lawyer had to step in and say, no, she didn't do it.
Right.
Because we all know who did it. I play that over and over again because it's so telling.
Telling when she won't answer the question. That's pretty easy to say, no, I didn't do it. But, when your first response is tap dancing, how to either deflect or challenge somebody's question. How can you ask such a question? I like when they say, I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. That happens to me a lot, by the way, on X when I challenge Bidding or Zellner. All of their surrogates seem to claim that they have no obligation to respond to me because, of course, who am I? And that's kind of funny to watch.
Right. They always say, "Oh, it's not our job to prove who did it. That was your job, and somehow you failed when you got 2 convictions." And I think that I will predict that should Karen Reed get convicted, we're going to get the same kind of argument. Should there be anyone left in the Free Karen Reed camp? It seems to me like it's dwindling. It's dwindling down. She's dwindling down in support, and they're making more, just like the TikTok Manawak people do. These disordered people seem to make more and more sock puppets. They have more identities than you know what to do with. Dr. Zapp is asking, how is your wife doing now, Ken?
Better. We're out of state now. We're living out west. And it's easier that when we go to the grocery store and things, we're not really too worried about people coming up to us. Although it has happened and happens much more frequently than than we like. Luckily, it's mostly not connected with threats of impending harm or something. But I'll tell you what, it was a long time before the trauma, I suppose, of being threatened over and over left her and me. It's a lot to take in when you haven't been subjected to that kind of thing before, and recognizing it was at least 10 years after the fact that it all happened. It remains baffling to me how that happened, or I guess perhaps why others haven't said more about, we knew they made this up and we've got to make this right, or just can't stand as the agreed to narrative now on what happened. How many people would say that the agreed to narrative was that Stephen Avery had evidence planted against him.
Right. I mean, if
and
anything,
I think
just
now
oh,
that that's
sorry.
become the history being the agreed upon lie. It's sad to look back on, not just from me personally, but from a justice advocate, from a person who really believed in the criminal justice system and the criminal justice process, and that it worked just the way it was supposed to still have that outcome challenged, and I think by somewhat reasonable people, and they were very well convinced. So, but what I always say, well, you don't know this, maybe you do. That it's only our behaviors and what we do and what we say that we can affect the world. The world decides our consequences, Roberta, and so you just keep doing the right thing. Hopefully, keep telling the truth and keep giving your perspective on what happened. And for people that you need to have believe you, they will. They'll see through that. They'll see the authenticity. They'll see that I would never have said any defendant, but much less Stephen Avery, and especially in another county, and going over to try to, I won't get up to make myself a sandwich, Roberta. I'm not going to go 2 counties over and try to get somebody convicted of a crime that I've never heard of. So it's just not going to happen.
And then he tried to hire you as a lawyer. Does
true.
this get? I mean, if this proves that they just really, I mean, I always say that the wrongful conviction movement becomes like the murderer that they're trying to free. The movement becomes like the murderer. I mean, if anything, the fact, I often bring up his killing of a cat, since sometimes people can have more feeling towards animals than they do human beings. I mean, if you want to get aboard a cat torturer or a cat killer, you would think that wouldn't be the premier person you want to free. But lucky to your good work, the conviction still stands. But he tried to hire you. Do any of these TikTok Manawak people get it in their thick skull that he tried to hire you as a defense attorney afterwards?
I know. I think it's interesting. He had agreed to meet with me. That was really interesting. I had shared a couple of letters with him back and forth, and he had asked me to come up and visit him in prison, and it was all arranged. And it was the warden who, before the date came, contacted me and put an end to that thought. Didn't think Avery Kratz reunion was in anybody's best interest, but used the excuse that it would impede his rehabilitative goals if I was to meet with him. And I always kind of wondered, he's in prison for life. What kind of rehabilitative goals do we have for Stephen Avery other than housing? So Anyway,
This has been my pleasure. Are you going to keep your eye on the Karen Reed case? Does it
I am.
interest you? Yeah.
Oh, it interests me now. Now that I've looked into it, and you know, I've got to assume that the jury's going to do the right thing. But if there's other developments, or if there are things that you think I can speak to that would be, if nothing else, entertaining, I'm always willing to come back and talk to you, Robert. I enjoy it.
That would be
much.
great. That would be great to have you come look. We could look at some of this cross-examination, some of, I call him Distraction Jackson, some of, or Petty and Eddie's cross-examinations. They've been falling on their flat on their face. Friday was an absolutely awful day for the defense. Let's hope that continues. Guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for being patient. Thank you, Ken Kratz. Please subscribe to Ken Kratz's channel. Please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. Leave me a comment. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much, Ken Kratz. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you, Robert.
Have a great night.